She's April.
And she's Molly.
And we are
the Book Besties. Beautiful cover.
I love the Lily Playhouse and all of its characters.
Yes, can we be done?
If not, it's going to be a really short episode. What a world it would be if you and I had the same taste in women, Olive.
I'm guessing it was the alcohol. I would blame it on absinthe if it was like Moulin Rouge or something.
So again, we're a lesbian couple.
Don't go down that rabbit hole. Don't go down that rabbit hole.
We meet with our therapist. I like the new hand gesture.
Ooh.
Ta-da! Jazz hands!
Book besties with spirit fingers.
Oh, Lord. So, we have come to the end of our season.
End of the year, end of season 1. 6 months we've been doing this, Molly.
We've survived. We've fucking survived. Months.
I can't believe we've actually been able to keep it to once a week, because like when we talked about doing this, we're like, oh, we'll do it every other week. And then we're like, let's start with once a week for the summer because like I'm off and like we could get, we could do once a week. Never in a million years did I actually think we would keep that progress. No! And now I'm like obsessively planning how to read all the books so I could still stay once a week. I mean, I'm literally reading 2 books at once. I'm reading a physical book and an audiobook all the time.
All the time. I can't do that. I can't do that.
Mm-hmm. I am.
I'm proud of you. You also have a lot more going on in your world than I do.
Yeah. I mean, I work full time, but you teach also, so I don't know.
Well, the girls are crockpots. I give them...
Set them to the right temperature and let them be.
Yeah, I literally give them ingredients. I put them down on the counter, and 8 hours later, I have a delicious meal. They are very... This is not a mom brag. My kids are smart.
Yeah, they are.
My kids are smart. They just are...
You can brag about that. Your kids are smart, and you made them. Like,
I mean... most parents are like, yeah, my kids are super smart. No, my kids are actually fucking smart. Yeah. And the only reason we can do homeschooling is because of their own motivation. Mm-hmm. I mean,
right.
Piper has started calling it independent study.
So I feel like if we were homeschooling, that's what it would be for James. It would be like an independent study. He would kind of just pick and choose the things he like was interested in, and we would just do those things. But Sam, he's really smart, but
he's a social kid, though.
He's a social butterfly. And I'm not totally convinced that he's not also neurodivergent. I don't think he has autism like James does, but he's got some tendencies that I'm like, is this being 5 or is this ADHD?
Probably ADHD. Probably. Welcome to the clan.
I mean, probably. Not a one of us in this house are neurotypical, so wouldn't surprise me. But anyway, my other best friend sent me this lovely bracelet. I don't know if you can see beautiful. It. So this is my Christmas present from her. It's it's a heart shape with the autism puzzles in it, and she put a note in it that said, "Autism doesn't come with an instruction manual. It comes with a mom who fights hard."
That is beautiful,
and that's what I'm going through right now. So. Yeah.
That is beautiful. I sent you PJs. Not as pretty.
You sent me... No, let me just tell you. I would much rather actually be wearing my PJs right now. All you fans, she sent me purple PJs with hearts and stars, and they're freaking beautiful and freaking comfortable, and like, that's how I want to walk into my 40s. 40s are for comfort. And when this episode premieres, I will, in fact, be 40.
Oh, woo! I'm jealous.
Lord. I also, Molly also sent me a book of all the bookstores around the world. And I told Tom I have a new life goal to visit all these bookstores. And he said, oh, tell Molly not to buy you shit like that.
I'll do that traveling with you. It'll be a Book Bestie tour.
Ooh, we could do live podcasts, Book Besties live at all the bookstores across the country.
And we can just describe them.
It'd be great. Maybe we could get Francesca Zappia to come now that she and I are BFFs on Instagram.
I know.
We're not Book Besties. We are not at all BFFs, but she did comment. She commented on one of my posts.
On the TikTok.
On one of my Instagram reels, where I was talking about Eliza and her monsters, which was our episode last week, and I am still riding that high. I'm going to be riding that high till I die. It was amazing.
So this week
is
City of Girls.
City of Girls. Beautiful cover.
Interesting book. Let's say that.
I want to go on record and say that this is my least favorite book that we have covered in 6 months on the pod. And that includes 7 Harry Potter books. Like 10 minutes into this book, we listened to the audiobook in the car on our way to Florida for Thanksgiving, and 10 minutes into the book, I looked over at Tom and was like, why the fuck did Molly think I would like this?
Because I liked it the first time.
Not at all my cup of tea. So my husband was actually texting Molly
for
me. Because
every once in a while something would say Tom in parentheses.
Yeah, because those were the times that I wasn't telling him what to say.
It's so funny. He also has a mess. He's a mess. We're all a mess.
He's a mess. I love him though.
He had a surprise for us this week, which was really nice.
Side note, yesterday he asserted his dominance over the koi in our pond by eating fish and chips while overlooking it.
He has a very interesting life. I
was just like, so basically what you were doing was telling them if they don't stay in line, they're next.
You're going to eat them?
He was like, yeah. I was like, what?
What does he think they're going to do?
I don't know.
What are they going to do?
Well, one of them, we lost one because he's
like it ran away or it died?
It died because it tried to run away. It apparently jumped, and it jumped into. He has a hydroponics planter, and it jumped into it, and like we couldn't find the fucking fish. We're like, where the fuck did the fucking fish go? So we thought maybe like we had taken the net off, and so we thought maybe a bird got it. A few days later, we found it in the hydroponics planter, and I mean it was still alive at that point, but it had been exposed to the sun, so it never like. Even though it had enough water, crispy. Right? Even though it had enough water to breathe, it never recovered.
Yeah. Oh no, because it's like a sunburn.
Right. So anyway, I'm sorry. That was way off topic. But he does have a surprise for us, besties.
Which April and I got to listen to today.
It was so great. We both listened to it today.
And I made Matthew Biggs listen to it, and he thought it was hilarious.
It's very funny. So we do not have an episode the first Tuesday in January, which is January 4th.
That sounds right.
We are taking a break that day, but if you would like to hear a fun preview of season 2 / review of season 1, my husband put a very thoughtful clip episode together for us, and it's short, so just give it a listen and give it a laugh, and thank my husband.
You'll see.
Yes.
So let's get into this book.
All right, we have to apparently.
I mean, if not, it's going to be a really short episode.
Is it fine that I'm okay with that?
I think people actually want to hear what you think.
I already told them what I think. All right, give us synopsis, Molly. Fuck.
Synopsis? No, synopsis.
It doesn't matter. It's both.
I know. I just like fucking with you.
Oh, fuck. Strap in, besties. This is going to be way off the rails today.
I mean, we're getting to the end of it. I get it.
Gosh.
This historical fiction set in World War II era, we meet Vivian. A 18/19-year-old, I don't know.
I think she's 19.
Yeah. Who has left college and seems to not know her path forward in life. Her parents ship her off to live with her Aunt Peg at Lily Playhouse in New York City. The story is told in a memoir / letter format as Vivian looks back at her life as she tries to explain to a woman named Angela how she met/knew her father.
Mm-hmm.
Longest game of How I Met Your Mother ever.
At least that one had 9 seasons and was a payoff. The end of this, whatever. I didn't actually look at the physical book. Is it written like a letter?
No, it's written like a book. It kind of here.
Okay,
like,
well, that was pointless.
It says New York at the very beginning. It says New York, 2010, right? Mm-hmm. And then like she does Angela, comma, and then I don't even think she signs it at the end. But when I first read this, as a personal note, she does sign it at the end at page 466. Thank you for listening, Vivian Morris.
466 pages to answer the fucking simple question that Angela asked her. What is your relationship with my father? What was your relationship?
When I first read this book, I gave it 4 stars, but I actually bumped it down to 2.5 after re-listening to it. And we're going to talk about why.
I gave it 1 because it doesn't give me an option to give it 0.
It's the new TikTok sound.
Is that a TikTok sound?
It is. It's a TikTok sound.
Oh my
I'd
gosh.
give you a 0, but I can't. So I give you a 1. It's Tyra Banks.
We'll save that one and I'll make one for this.
So this book is written by Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love. Have you read that or any of her other works?
I have not. I've seen the movie for Eat, Pray, Love, which I heard was very different than the book Eat, Pray, Love. But I love Julia Roberts, so she's in it. I'm there for it. But no, I haven't read it. I want to say the mutual friend, ex-friend, mutual...
The ex-friend, not friend, the one that's
no longer our friend that we mentioned in the first episode.
Because of a myriad of reasons.
She doesn't deserve our friendship. She doesn't deserve our friendship. But I want to say that she was the one that suggested Eat, Pray, Love. And then I think, did we go to the movie together?
I think we all went to the movie together.
And I was like, I'm not reading it though.
It was that whole group of friends.
Yeah.
When we were all here.
Yeah.
And... because we had all read Sobo, right? And then we went to the movie, and then she had suggested we read and then go to Eat, Pray, Love. And
I didn't read it, but I went.
And I didn't read it either, because I had just popped out a second kid. And she was mad that we didn't read it.
Well, you know what? Whatever. I'm mad that she did a lot of things, so.
Right.
Anyway, we all went to see the Hunger Games together, too. Well, no, you and I went to see the Hunger Games.
You and I went without them because
we're assholes. Cooler than everybody else.
We see that in 2 different lights. We omitted people. I go, we're assholes. You go, because we're cooler than everybody else.
The truth.
Did you enjoy the audiobook narrator?
So I liked her voice, and I kept thinking to myself, I know this voice. Where the hell do I know this voice from? So I had actually Googled her, and she plays a character on the show Orange is the New Black.
Yes, she does.
And so that's where I knew her from. If you're a fan of Orange is the New Black, which I haven't seen all of the seasons, I stopped after the season where they had like the
riot.
I was like, well, this season was horrible. So I stopped after the riot season. But she played the Martha Stewart, Paula Deen hodgepodge person who was in the prison. And then ended up having like a 3-way with the guard and yoga.
Yeah, it was fucking weird.
Janet. It was weird. But anyway, that voice was so familiar to me. And so I had to Google it. I liked her as a narrator. Like, I feel like I would listen to one of her audiobooks again. I think she was really a good choice for the character, even though the character, when she's telling the story, is older than what this woman is. I think she had the right voice for Vivian. I think she really did a good job with that.
I have a link actually written by Penguin Audio Random House about her being the narrator. So I enjoyed it. I think it gave a sense of age to the character that the storytelling required. So
I'm re-listening to the Hunger Games right now because it's winter break, and so fuck it. And that's my favorite series, and we're going to be covering that on season 2 of the pod. So I'm getting a head start. And I am really bothered by the fact that they picked a narrator who is way too old to be Katniss. And then
I never liked the narrator for it.
Well, they've redone it, and Tatiana Maslany from She redid it, but I haven't heard her version of it.
I wonder
But
if it'll update in my
from Orphan Black, she redid them. But the narrator for the original audiobooks, the way that she voices Katniss when Katniss is like having dialogue, she talks younger, and it really irritates me. Why didn't they just pick somebody that had a younger voice?
Interesting. I'll have to check my Audible because I would be interested to see if they switched out the
Oh my
version.
gosh, if you get the Tatiana Maslany, I'm going to borrow your Audible, not sponsored.
Hashtag.
Hashtag not sponsored.
This book, like several I've picked for the pod, is historical fiction. We all know it's a favorite genre of mine, but it's not, and you're not a fan. I realize I've never asked you, why is this one of your least favorite genres?
I don't know that I have a reason. I don't know.
History fucking sucks. No.
No, I mean, I love history. That's the thing. Like, I once watched History Channel for an entire day, so it started like repeating things that happened that day because like their content like just repeats itself. Yeah,
like people that watch HGTV.
Yes, exactly like that. I really like history. I just am not really into historical fiction. I went through this time when I was younger that I really liked Holocaust fiction. When I was like in 4th or 5th grade, and I think I've mentioned that on the pod before. But it's not.
There's a group of us that were really into Holocaust fiction, and then there was a group that was really into Indian in the Cupboard, and then the rest of
loved
them
Indian in the Cupboard,
and then there was a group of us. There was a group that were into the Crucible, and then the rest were mythology. So you either had
I didn't like the Crucible, but all the other things you mentioned I liked. I think as I've gotten older, I've preferred dystopian, and post-apocalyptic is my favorite genre. I know that people like Book Talk and Bookstagram right now is all spicy, like adult fiction, and that's not really my jam. I don't.
Same.
This is the biggest complaint that I have with this book. I don't like books that have gratuitous sex and sex with multiple people. And that tends to be adult fiction, which is why I gravitate towards YA anyway. Now, I did read Outlander, and I really enjoyed Outlander. And that is historical fiction, but it's also time travel.
It's written differently, though.
Yeah, it's written differently. And that's also very spicy, but I really liked it.
I don't
really know why I don't historical fiction.
I like Elizabeth Gilbert's writing style.
Does she always write historical? Well, I guess not. Eat, Pray, Love, isn't?
No.
But Eat, Pray, Love, wasn't that a memoir? Like, that was her...
Kinda-ish.
Yeah.
Kinda-ish.
I don't think I'll pick her up again. Like, that's not...
Same. I picked this up because I follow her on Instagram for different reasons. She's done, like, virtual, like, symposiums about writing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I read a couple of, like, her not exposés, but, like, she's written things for, like, Huffington Post and those kind of places about
like
writing.
Editorials and things?
Yes, editorials, that's the word. About writing. And so I started following her based off of, like, her writing advice. I mean, she's a Times bestseller ×3, right? Like, obviously, she knows something.
Right.
And so I started following her on there. And, like, so that's how I got this book, was because she announced it on there.
You know why I think I don't like historical fiction?
Huh.
I think it's probably because I like thinking about what kind of future we could have.
Right.
So when I read post-apocalyptic, I want a hero story. I want someone to rise up and change things and make things better. In the past, even though I love history,
it's set in stone.
It's done. Like, that's the way it is. And I think I'm more interested in, like, actual people in history than I am fictional people in that historical world. Have you read the book A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue?
No.
So that's one that's, like, all over Book Talk and Bookstagram, and it's, like, one that people really like, and it's a YA. It's historical fiction, and I picked that up because in our challenge that we run a book challenge that's not a part of the podcast.
No.
It's a private group that we've been running now for, I don't know, 5 years or something. And
a long time.
Longer than that. 8 years. 8 years.
Anyways.
8 years. And we had to read a historical fiction because that's not really my jam. I picked that one because it was supposed to be like the two main characters are gay. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, okay, so it'll have like a different twist on historical fiction, and I hated it. I just think that it's just not my jam.
I like historical fiction because I like history, but I like seeing. The first time I read what I thought was historical fiction was Number the Stars.
I would say that was the same for me.
And I loved seeing something terrible and tragic from somebody else's point of view. Mm-hmm. And I like being able to, it helps me grasp and understand the time period better.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I fact check along the way because that's who I am.
I do too.
And I learn as I go, and that's why I enjoy it. It's not always my like jam. I don't always like all historical fictions. Everyone knows how I feel about the Outlander books. That woman's writing style drives me up a wall for some reason.
No,
I can't
immediately no.
Immediately no. But anyways.
Well, there are some historical fictions I have liked. Number of the Stars is one. Out of the Dust is also a children's book that's a novel in verse about the Dust Bowl during the Depression, which was really interesting. But I think being that most of my major in undergrad was literature, I read so much that wasn't really historical fiction because it was written during that time period. But here's an interesting thing, Molly. My favorite book of all time is historical fiction.
What? Oh, technically it is.
It's historical fiction.
Technically,
it was written in the 60s and takes place in the 40s. And that's my favorite book.
Well, then what the fuck's wrong with ya?
I don't know. So many things. Don't go down that rabbit hole. Don't go down that rabbit hole.
In our new podcast, What the Fuck is Wrong with April and Molly, we meet with our therapists. No.
Oh
anyways, next question. This book is set in New York City, which is a massive cliche, but right before America enters into World War II. What did you think of this setting?
Okay, so I like books set in New York City because, you know, it's like a dream of mine to go to New York City.
It's the world.
I still haven't.
Yeah.
Still haven't been to NYC. And so I like that, but this one was definitely cliche. Mm-hmm. First of all, if your daughter is having trouble and basically flunks out of school, why would you go send her to live in New York City to run a theater company with her lesbian aunt? That feels like it wouldn't work out in your favor.
Your sister, whom you don't speak to,
right?
Because of
her lifestyle. Yeah,
I think the mindset
lots of bad choices.
I think the mindset is if you're not going to be like us, we're just going to cast you aside like we do her. You know what I mean? Just
I guess.
But I mean, we get stories in New York all the time, right? Mm-hmm. But I liked seeing the transition of the city through Vivian's eyes as we got deeper into the war, right?
Yeah.
As life changed in the world, life changed in New York City. And it was interesting to see that perspective, right? Because if you see the musical Hamilton, right, we get the point of view of how New York City changes during that setting.
Right.
And
Great Gatsby's New York City in the 20s.
Right. And so I like...
Which I also like Great Gatsby.
Right. Fuck, what's wrong with you, man?
That's not historical fiction because it was written in that time period.
But it's just... I like seeing a city in transition.
Yeah.
It makes it a character in my mind.
And that is why New York was a good choice, even though it was very cliche, because New York is one of those cities that is evolving, you know? Mm-hmm. There aren't a lot of cities that you can be like, I'm going to set a book that takes place over, I mean, how many years does this book take place over? 40, 50?
A long time. Like, she's in her 80s or some shit when she ends it.
Right. You can't...
40 years, at least.
You can't pick a better city to evolve over 40 years than New York.
Because we learn about when the Playhouse goes down and they changed Brooklyn that way, and like it's just it's very interesting. I found it interesting.
It was cliche, but
It was cliche,
it
but
was
it's
still
very
somehow a
interesting.
good choice. I don't know.
Yeah. Our main character in this book is Vivian. She is very confident about her looks and her abilities. She admits that she knows she's pretty. This is different from most of our main characters we meet. She also describes her time at Vassar, and she's pretty much a typical, air quote, bad girl, sneaking out, drinking, and smoking. What do you think about her as we're just meeting her?
I mean, I guess okay. So she's telling the story of her life.
Right.
And I guess at this point, like I think of like older women when you have a conversation with them and they've already had their lives and they're just like
they're just reflexing back, waxing on the facts.
This is the things that happen. So I worked with a woman at the church that I was the children's ministry for. I shared an office with a woman who is a dancer in New York City during this like time like in the in the 40s. And Margie is like, I mean, she's still alive. She's alive and lives in Pasadena still. Margie is like the most like upright citizen I can like ever imagine. Like she's the ultra good girl. Was married to her husband for a very long time. He was actually hit by a car. It was tragic, like hit and run.
Oh my gosh.
And he died. It was awful. But like I cannot for the life of me picture her dancing like these women in this book, because like that is not the woman that she is. And when she talked about it, well, when she talked about it, she never mentioned like being like any of the women who are in this book. But I don't know. I think about one of my favorite movies, A League of Their Own, where Madonna's like, I'm not going back to dancing for 10 cents a dance, and thinking about things like that, because like that's essentially what they were doing. Like these showgirls were
looky-loos,
right? The showgirls in this book, they purposely put dances in so that they could show off their bodies. Like there was, this
because shimmy. They weren't like they were off Broadway. They weren't Broadway,
right? You're right. And they weren't. I don't know why kids were coming to those, because they were not putting together kid-friendly shows.
Do you think your opinion of Vivian changes as she ages?
I mean, I can't. One thing I can say about her is she knows who she is. But
how many of us can say that?
I have a big problem with her as a character because, I mean, I guess she was always the bad girl, but like 2 weeks after going into New York City, this is at the beginning of the book. And like, this was when I was like, why would Molly think I would like this? 2 weeks in, she was like, oh, I might as well get losing my virginity over with. Like, I might as well.
And, like, the showgirls plan it out, man. They're like, no, this is unacceptable.
And essentially, she loses her virginity to a married man who pays her for sex.
A veterinarian.
Right. This is just counter to all of the morals that I have, like all of them. And every last moral that I have, that's not it.
Well, while we're talking about sex, let's talk about the sex in the book, because
there's a lot of it.
There's a lot of it, and you and I have different perspectives when it comes to sex.
We do.
And I mean, that's life. Everybody is allowed that.
Mm-hmm.
While I was not as free with my body as Vivian.
Mm-hmm. Nor was I. Nowhere near it.
I comprehend the sexless love. I understand it. It's a physical need. Well, you're on the other side of that. Sex and love go hand in hand for you. What's the quote from Grey's? Your heart's in your vagina?
My heart does live in my vagina. If my husband pulls that out as an intro quote, I may have to hurt him.
But it's, I mean, and, everybody has different comfort levels when it comes to talking about sex. And it definitely shows, this book shows the different perspectives on it, right? Yeah. Peg and Olive are very private in their personal lives. We meet showgirls who are the opposite of that.
They're literally prostitutes.
Right. And then we have so many different characters that have different point of views on it. It's just interesting.
So I once heard an interview with Maya Bialik where she was talking about how she was a late bloomer. And I mean, I guess that would be the best way to describe me. And I'm okay with that and I own it. But I'm not uncomfortable talking about sex now that I'm married and like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not going to talk about it on the pod. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Right,
but
and that's not what I'm asking for.
but
I'm sorry if
no.
that's
But
how it came
no.
off.
I understand. But for me, I think that I'm going to quote Red, White, and Royal Blue because we both love that book.
We do.
And I can't directly quote it because I don't fucking know the direct quote. But Alex, when he realizes that he's in love with Henry, he says it occurs to him that that's what made the sex good. Was that
emotions.
He loves him. And to me, that is what makes sex good, is when you love somebody. So if my heart lives in my vagina, whatever. That's fine with me.
That's wonderful for you.
But like, and that doesn't have to be everybody's experience.
No,
but I also don't read books like that. Like, right. I don't want to read books where I don't mind books with sex. I liked Outlander. I loved Red, White, and Royal Blue. We're gonna cover the Love Quotient in February, and I love that. And there's a lot of sex in that, and there's literally sex with a prostitute in that. But it's only the two characters are the only two that are having sex in the book that I have to read. I didn't want to read about Vivian having sex with all these people. Like, that was just too much for me.
Understand. I mean, it's like you said, it's a different, we all have different experiences. Mm-hmm. And you are true to your experience. What I think is the most important thing. I think, what is it Amy Poehler says? Good for you, not for me, right?
Right.
And I think the bottom line of this is we're allowed to all have these different viewpoints, right? Be it religion, sex, politics. Good for you, not for me, right? Like, whatever you're doing, as long as it's not hurting me, great. If it's not hurting, and I'm not hurting you, great. It's
right. And I'm not judging you or anybody else. Like, I'm not passing a judgment.
Oh, I never said you were. I didn't think you were.
No. I just want to clarify for that everybody. I'm not passing a judgment. I just would prefer to personally read, and that's books okay, where there's only sex between
this people. Just feels more realistic to what I've seen in my 20s with my friends.
I wasn't having sex in my 20s.
Right. Well, no.
I guess I was, but not like in my early 20s.
I'm not saying I was having like a mid of partners like her. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, but like watching friends have multiple partners, dating different guys, cycling through boyfriends, as people would say it. It's a part of that, my experience, and it's a part of some people's experiences. You know,
I would say most people that go to college, that is a part of their experience. Like, yeah. I know that it just wasn't something that I chose for myself.
That's okay, and that's what makes this book so shitty for you. Is Vivian's a whore?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to read it.
Right. So, in the beginning, we learned that Vivian idolizes her grandmother. Mm-hmm. She teaches about fashion and how to sew. The loss of her definitely sits with her, as she tells us the story in her old age. My grandmother was the same for me. Mm-hmm. Well, kind of. Arvina was a smoking, sailor-mouthed, redheaded, Lucille Ball redheaded Spitfire, and was one of the favorite people on this planet. But I feel like every girl has this kind of relationship with their grandmother. And I think that's why it sticks with Vivian, right? As she's still forming her adulthood. I lost my grandmother around the same age. And growing into an adult without her sucked. It sucked because Arvina had a lot to tell me. And but I get why it sits with her. I mean, I still miss my grandmother daily. I can still hear her yelling at me. I know I can hear her in the back of my head now. As she's telling me, I'm telling everybody our family business. Because Johnsons don't do that. We don't do that.
Clearly we do, because I'm one too. But
which, not related, by the way, gang. Did you had a similar experience, right?
I did. So I actually lost my last living grandparent, which was Anna Ruth. It's been a year and a half now.
Yeah.
But I was much closer to Lois, my mom's mom,
Mm-hmm.
and she was legit my best friend. Like, I literally spoke to her on the phone
She was
every
your
single
favorite
day.
person.
Yeah, every single day from the time that I started college until the day she died. And the day this episode premieres, it will be 11 years since we lost her. And fuck, that's still really hard to say.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have like the strongest relationship with my mom, so like she really filled that role for me.
Yeah.
She taught me how to cook, and like the last conversation we ever had, the day she died, I asked her how to make this leftover turkey dinner that she made every year, and um, yeah. I feel like losing her, like, so she died 6 months after Tom and I got
Mm-hmm.
married. Um, and she didn't actually get to come to our wedding because she had a fall and broke her leg in 3 places, and we got married in Texas.
Right.
And so that was like
I remember that.
that was so hard for me that she wasn't
Yeah.
there. But the day that she died, Tom actually came home from work and woke me up, and he was the one that told me. My mom called him and told him because she didn't want me to be alone when I found out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was no way that I was going to take that well, no matter who
No.
told me. It didn't matter.
Mm-mm.
But we had only been married for 6 months, and so at that time we didn't have any kids. Um, and now, you know, I'm 40,
Yeah.
so she missed
Big
11
changes.
years. She missed my kids, you
Yeah.
know.
I think about that all the time. I think about that all the time.
Yeah,
Mostly I think about the fact that Grandma Arvina would most definitely, oh, I'm sorry,
it's okay.
most definitely be cursing my kids out because that's what my great grandparents do on the Johnson side is
Uh-huh.
the older they get, the more foul their mouth gets. My grandma Arvina, her stepfather was my great grandpa Max, and
Mm-hmm.
he was German.
Mm-hmm.
And the older he got, the more he cussed at us in German. It's a family tradition. I just don't
Where was
speak
he
German.
from? Where was he from?
It's really the family lore is
Not in
very.
Germany. Like, where did he live in the US?
Oh, where I'm from, home.
Oh.
The story I was told. Now this is actually really funny. This we don't have time for this.
No, I just thought I realized that we might have been related. Like, actually related. Because there are Johnsons on both sides of my family. And it's not that we're
You
in
know,
the,
okay.
but I like this is a conversation for later, but Molly, I think we actually might legitly be related.
Grandpa
So
Max.
I have to talk about this later.
Okay, so Grandpa Max came to the States with his little brother.
Mm-hmm.
And in their 20s, they parted ways. And he always told the family that his brother died in Pearl Harbor. Now, I learned later after doing research that that was not the case, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, circling back to the point of how
We're
this connects to the
family!
book. We might be. So circling back to this, Vivian mentions at one point in the book that she thinks that maybe she was dealing with like depression after her grandmother died, and like
Mm-hmm.
the mourning that loss really was what had caused her to go down this bad path. And like,
Right.
she lost her grandma right before college, and
I mean, it makes sense.
it makes a lot of sense to me. Like, that's not how I acted out, but I also lost my grandma when I was
I definitely
28, so it was a different experience.
Arvina died right after my 21st birthday.
Yeah.
The right before Christmas, after my 21st birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of hell raising.
Mm-hmm.
Got myself into some trouble off and on. Nothing like jail or anything wild like that. Other things. And then I was like, I can't do this. I have to get out of here. And I joined the military.
Well, I mean, that ended up being a good decision for you.
I know, but I had to literally leave my hometown because my grandmother died.
I think that I think if my grandmother would have died before I had Tom, I wouldn't have made it.
Oh, love.
I don't think I would have made it.
Grandparents are important is what we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Grandparents are important.
They are. They are. And now I have, Tom has one living grandparent. And when we got married, we had 5 between us. And we just have the one left now.
Matt has one grandmother left. My Grandma Joyce died suddenly I'm still struggling with this. Grandma Joyce died about 2 years ago. That's all I'm going to say because I'm still having a hard time with that.
Honestly,
that was my mom's mom.
Honestly, I think we need to move on from this because...
Yes, we're spiraling.
Yeah, we're spiraling down a really sad, morbid place that our pod doesn't usually go.
Okay.
But I also think we needed to say these things.
Right. So, I've researched Butter and Egg Man because I didn't understand the reference.
I don't remember that part.
So it's a 1920 slang term popularized by Texas Gideon. A butter and egg man is a traveling businessman that's eager to spend large amounts of money in the big city in unsavory ways. So, and it was also a play. So I want to talk about Peg and Olive now.
Okay.
So Peg is Vivian's aunt who owns the playhouse.
Right.
Off the bat, we can see they're 2 halves of a whole, right?
Right.
We learn that Vivian moves in with them and they live on the same floor, but that's the end of the description, right? We don't know if they have their own separate rooms, if it's a whole thing.
Right.
Eventually, with Vivian, we learn the truth about their relationship, right?
Yeah.
Peg
and Olive are lesbians.
Yeah. What did you think about their dynamic, and what do you think about how, like, we learned about their relationship?
I wasn't surprised, and I was also really surprised that Vivian was surprised.
Because it was
she mentions that at school, at college, she was around lesbians, but she had never met a gay man before. And if you have been around lesbians and you knew, like, I just really was surprised that she didn't pick that up. Like,
I mean,
I don't know, but I think their dynamic is really good. They are the couple that balances each other. Peg is very, like, flighty and chaotic, and Olive is like reining her in.
Structured. You know what I mean? So it's us. So again, we're a lesbian couple.
I don't know, Molly. It seems that way.
Wait, we might be related. Moving on.
We just went to a very wrong place. This is not okay. I like their dynamic a lot, though.
Yeah. What did you think about how they ran the playhouse? It was like part brothel, part like YMCA sleepover, part like bar, part.
I think that all of that was Peg. I don't think Olive,
it was.
If Olive were running the show by herself, she wouldn't have let that happen.
But I think it would have been a completely different playhouse if it wasn't for Olive, with Olive in charge.
But then again, I also feel like even though Olive had a partnership in the playhouse and a partnership with Peg professionally and personally, it wasn't her playhouse. It was Peg and her ex-husband's playhouse.
Billy.
Which they formed it together. It was their business. I have no idea at what point Olive came into the picture because we don't know that. But
I think
it was before they separated.
It's insinuated that it was during the Great War. That's when they met, during World War I, when they were being nurses overseas. And it kind of sounded like while they were making these shows, Olive just kind of started tagging along and coming along with them. That's what I got out of it.
Well, that's also how Peg met Billy.
Right.
So,
Billy actually outs them, right?
I actually thought Billy was going to end up being gay, even though it turns out that he's just a playboy.
He literally says to Olive when they're in the middle of making this big show, "What a world it would be if you and I had the same taste in women, Olive."
Yep.
And then,
but Vivian still doesn't pick up on that. She doesn't realize that they're together until she sees them. Like,
well, she's so self-absorbed, you know. I mean, and then, what did you think of the dynamic between Billy, Peg, and Olive?
So I think, I mean, I don't know that they don't put a label on it of like what their actual sexual orientation is, but my guess is that Peg is bi or
pan or
something.
Queer.
Yeah.
She identifies
Queer
as queer.
Right, in some form. But I really think that Olive is lesbian and that's it. Like, she likes women and she only likes women. And I think Billy only likes women. And so the dynamic ends up being the person that it's very Arizona Robbins and Callie.
Yes. Well,
with Mark. It's very that.
It's very that. I have a theory that Peg felt like she was getting up there in years, wanted her family money, knew Billy had money, didn't want to be identified as a lesbian in her older age, and just married Billy, you know?
No, they got married young. I mean, they got married right after the war.
Young-ish. I mean, young for the times, I guess, but, like, I don't know.
I don't think that what I think the problem was with the dynamic was I think Olive has some jealousy because they could be open about their relationship, right, whereas she and Peg never could be.
Right.
And I think that Peg
is too kind to Billy, right?
She put Billy on a pedestal.
Yeah. I mean, he had his own apartment there, even though he was never there.
Right. And I don't think that's... I don't blame for Olive for feeling that jealousy. I can't imagine what it would be like to not be able to be honest about your relationship,
right,
with the person that you love.
Right. I loved Olive. She honestly was the glue that kept everybody alive those years because, I mean, she saved Vivian's ass with that whole threesome thing.
That scene when she refers to Vivian as her niece, and this is my family and I'm going to fix this. To me, that was the truest moment for Olive.
And I honestly think Vivian's always seen her that way. She probably always has inquired, and it's just, she's never been able to go upstate with Peg, you know what I mean? She could never go to her Peg's brother's house and spend, like, so she has always lived vicariously through Olive, and Olive's always lived vicariously through Peg, having family in the States. So, of course, she's going to cling on to any sense of family.
Right. Well, I think that was a real honest moment. That was Vivian witnessing Olive declare her relationship with Peg.
Yeah. Did you think the Playhouse was a character itself?
I mean, I guess.
I don't think so. When I think of
it was more of a like
a setting.
It was more a setting than it was a character.
When I think of
the elevator in Grey's Anatomy is a character.
I
don't think this Playhouse is
the Bishop House in Discovery of Witches. That house is a character.
Well, that house is alive.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yes.
Throughout this book, Vivian becomes obsessed with others. First it's Celia, then Edna Parker Watson, and then Antony. And then, like, she clings to people, but she can only be friends with them, like, or hyper focus on them one at a time, right? Mm-hmm. Why do you think she does this? Do you think it's youth? Do you think it's just her personality? And then, I mean, Edna eventually calls her a bland girl, right? Pretty much compares her to a barnacle on a ship.
Well, Edna's also a scorned woman, so she's gonna say whatever.
Edna's pissed, and can you blame her?
No, I can't. I don't know if I can really answer that question. Personally, I don't find Vivian to be a likable character. I don't like her.
She's a faulted character, and I think that's on purpose, right?
Mm-hmm. But I think there is something to be said about your youth and discovering who you are, and I just don't know that I feel like they ever got to that point with Vivian.
Right.
I don't
think, yeah. I mean, she just lived a life. She didn't live a life of purpose. Does that make sense?
Right. It's like a really bad version of Forrest Gump. Like, Forrest Gump had all these things happen and obviously went through a long time period, an entire life, right? And, like, that's what this book tried to do, but it did it really poorly.
Really poorly. The Playhouse has several wild characters. Mm-hmm. Was there anybody that was your favorite?
I I cannot remember his name, but I liked the flamboyant male dancer.
Oh yeah,
The
I can't
gay
remember his name
male. I
either.
cannot remember his name, but I thought he was great. I loved that he was who he was, and that was it. And I
Right.
love, like, he
He
just
lived out
reminded
loud
me,
for sure.
right? He just reminded me so much of I can't think of his name, but on like America's Next Top Model, like original America's Next Top Model, he was the guy that would teach
Mr.
them how to
J.
walk. Yes.
Mr. J.
No,
Yep.
Miss J.
Miss J. Miss
Miss
J.
J.
Sorry, Miss
He
J.
reminded
Yes.
me of that. Like,
Yes.
he was just who he was,
And that was that.
And that was that.
My favorite was Mr. Herbert, like playwright,
Drunk.
drunk, ex-lawyer.
Yeah.
Turns out to be Billy and Peg's godson. Like,
yeah, what the hell?
Like, obviously, I would read a story about that man's life. How did he go from being a lawyer, managing assets of Billy's family's fortune, to living at Lily Playhouse?
I'm guessing it was the alcohol. I would blame it on absinthe if it was like Moulin Rouge or something. Like, this book has a lot of like parallels to Moulin Rouge. It's a different time period. It's a different city, but it's the same like freedom of sex,
sexuality,
art,
love,
right, yeah.
Do you think the war gave Vivian a sense of purpose or a second chance?
I don't know, because I sort of feel like what ended up happening for her was that she sort of just fell into that job with Peg.
Right.
Like, she, at that point, had already
her life is just falling into shit, right?
Like, obviously, she loses her brother, and that was tragic. And she lost her brother in what was a very tragic bombing.
Real thing.
It was a real thing, rooted in history. And that was really tragic. But I really feel like that the reason that she ended up being involved at all was because Peg was just you need to get your shit together. Come on, we're gonna do this. I don't think it was her purpose. I think she just, like, I don't think she ever really truly had a purpose, probably until she started the bridal shop. And really,
Marjorie,
after,
which we're gonna get to Marjorie.
Really, after Marjorie had her son.
Yeah. Do you think the death of her brother matured her at all? Because I don't. I think she just aged. I don't think maturity really hit till later in life.
No, I don't think it did either.
I want to talk about Marjorie. She's a constant in Vivian's life, right? From the moment we meet her
and Marjorie is younger than her by a few years, so she's a teenager when we meet her.
In Lowski's used Emporium, she's like a child, right? She's in like middle school or something.
Yeah, I think she's like
13, 14.
12 or 13, yeah.
But Marjorie's an interpreter for her parents. She goes to school full time.
Right.
She's honestly my favorite character in this book. What did you think about her and her place in this book?
Like, I feel like I want to know more about her than what we actually got to know, because I think her character was interesting.
Right.
She's first generation to be born in this country of Jewish, European Jewish immigrants. And she's also very, free. But we don't really
she wears like the Russian, like what she had the Mountie hat and like the Russian skulls, and she was
like, I think she would have been one to know more about, but we don't really get to know about her. No. Like, it's almost like, to me, that the author spent so much time building up the backstory of who Vivian was, that by the time she got to where Vivian was in her life, that she was writing this letter to Angela, she kind of would have already been, she would have been at 1,000 pages if she actually gave us the story.
And she didn't flesh out the other characters. Right. Yeah.
And this is what bothers me about this book. She asked one question. Now that my mom is dead, I would like to know what you were to my dad.
Who you were to my
father. Who is also dead.
Right.
And instead of answering that question of, Your father and I loved each other, but we loved each other platonically. I loved him romantically, but he would never have left your mom and you. And we never had sex, and we were never engaged in a relationship beyond a friendship. Instead of telling her that, she spent 400 fucking pages telling her about all the guys she banged.
Right. By chapter 29, I'm actually getting there. When we get to chapter 29, we finally get to the point of this damn letter to Angela. Her father was a man who drove her home.
Right.
Her and Wallace home.
Very rude.
Yeah, he called her a whore.
Mm-hmm.
Then he ended up being on the same ship that Wallace was on when he died.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lot of PTSD from that.
Severe PTSD. And burns all over his body.
Yes. He definitely has PTSD.
The commanding officer for the captain of the ship tried to have all of the men who were blown off the ship
masted for it being AWOL and deserting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I personally, this is emotional cheating. I hold this up there with the three-way.
Mm-hmm.
He emotionally cheated on his wife for years with
he
Vivian.
did. He did. He definitely did. And I'm not going to say that their relationship was right by any means. I think probably what would have been the best thing for him to do when he came home was to divorce his wife, because he was never going to be...
No. He was never... But he didn't want to be out of his daughter's life either, I don't think.
Well, she wouldn't do it, right? Because she was Catholic and couldn't divorce him.
What did you think of him? What did you think of Frank?
I mean, I feel really bad for him that he has PTSD, that he had PTSD, that he didn't really feel like he could ever be... He was never going to be whole again.
No.
It wasn't just about the burns on his body. He was never going to be whole again.
No, there was a massive amount of PTSD that poor man had. That poor man was traumatized.
Right. I'm really bothered by the fact that he brought his daughter to her Vivian's dress shop to have her dress made. I understand why he did it. This is a person he cares about, but you basically took her to your mistress's shop. Now, I understand they never slept together, but they had a much more intimate relationship than what he ever had with his wife after he came home from the war.
Right. Which he barely had a relationship with his wife before the war.
Before the war, because they grew up together in an Italian neighborhood.
Which she was younger than him.
And they got married and consummated the marriage, and then basically she got pregnant.
And then he went off. But, I get it. He lived in the shack out back, and, they barely talked, and he didn't know how to be a father to her. It's just... I don't like how Vivian made the story of her father about herself. Now, this definitely shows who Vivian is as a person, and I know we need some of this backstory to understand how her path and Frank's path crosses. It's just...
I don't know that we do, because I don't think Angela really needed to know that the first encounter that the two of them had was that he called her a whore.
Right.
I don't think that they needed to know that. And she definitely didn't need to know about the fact that she lost her virginity to a guy who paid her. It was really unnecessary. There was so much that happened in this book. The story should have been, I knew your dad because da-da-da-da-da, the end.
And this is how that went, right? And,
she has no guilt over how she basically was emotionally cheating with him.
Yeah. Do you think she should have written Angela?
I don't think it's that Angela doesn't deserve some sort of explanation.
But not almost 1,000 pages?
No, but not the explanation she got.
500, almost 500. I exaggerate.
Not the explanation she got.
No.
She deserved an explanation that was, I want you to know your father and I never had sex. But the explanation that she got started with how much sex she had. So why would you ever
I'm a sexual being and your father never... I don't know.
Why would you continue to read it? I would just assume by the first few pages that you were banging my dad.
Right.
Cool.
Right. And at the end of the letter, she extends like, she ends the book in the letter by offering her friendship to Angela. Mm-hmm. You know, we have very few friends in life, and life is too short, and I would really love to sit with you and talk to you about your father and be your friend if you want.
That could have been the whole ballsy. But that could have been the letter. I would like to talk to you about this in person.
Right. That's so ballsy, just to be like, excuse me. Hey.
Well, Angela has lost her mom and her dad now. And now you're like,
hey,
I'll be your surrogate mom. No. It's
so fucking weird.
All of it is bad. It's all bad.
It's just weird. That's it. That's my question.
Yes, can we be done?
It's just I have the only few nice things I have. I love the setting. I love the world she created. I love the Lily Playhouse and all of its characters. I just don't get Vivian. I have problems with the unlikable main character, right? I think that's purposeful. We meet Vivian and we instantly like, oh, she's conceited. Mm-hmm. We instantly get off foot with her that she is just self-centered. Mm-hmm. And I had a hard time bouncing back from that.
Yeah, but I've read quite a few books with the main character being unlikable and I still love them. Mm. This is just one that it was just not for me.
She just never got redemption.
No. All right. So next week we are not having an episode, but go watch our listen to our short teaser. Molly. Go listen to the short teaser. It's like 2 or 3 minutes, so it won't take a lot of your time. And then we're going to kick off season 2 on January 11th. And January 11th and 18th, we are doing 2 special episodes. We're doing crossover episodes with Isaac Gordon, who runs the Master of None podcast. It's a phenomenal podcast. We've linked it last week. We'll link it again this week. And you can listen to our pod and his pod. I'm sorry. You can listen to both episodes on both our pod platforms. And so I will host on the 11th, and we will read Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. And then Isaac will host on the 18th, and we will read Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers. I almost said Stormship. Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein, probably. Mm-hmm. And he will host that day. And guys, his podcast is very different than ours.
So much different from ours.
It's not what we're doing, but he's doing this with us. We're really excited about it. If you are fans of Master of None and you have now picked up our podcast, welcome.
Hi, thanks.
Hi, we're very different than him.
My backstory, Isaac actually reached out to us, not the other way around, which I was really impressed. I know him. I still say this. I know him as Mr. Gordon. Mm-hmm. He was one of my superior officers when I was active duty. Now neither of us are obviously enlisted. He and I became friends over the years via the interwebs and had vastly different lives. His podcast is super interesting. If you like homesteading or emergency prep or any of that kind of like hands-on wilderness kind of stuff. I don't know how to explain it. Stuff. You got to get the fist motions in there. Stuff. You should definitely go listen to his pod because it's very interesting. I find it very interesting.
And we will have 2 weeks of episodes where we're not allowed to curse because
by the way, if you do hear it, he's going to be bleeping it on his side.
He's going to be bleeping it on his side. So we're going to try really hard to be on our best behavior and not
fingers crossed. Frack yeah, man.
Anyway, so that's it for this week.
Gang. That's it for the season.
Yes. We'll see you on the new year for season 2.
Maybe. Bye. Thank you for joining us on Book Besties. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The views discussed here are those of April and Molly and not those of anyone else. Today, the book was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. Your book besties are Molly Biggs and April Watkins. Editing by Thomas Watkins, and music is Sleep Sweetly by Prigida. Don't forget to follow Book Besties on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. If you would like to contact the Book Besties, please email us at bookbestiespod@gmail.com.